We begin the day with the two claims that U.S. President Trump has stated this week repeatedly, that a deal to open the Strait of Hormuz is imminent and that Iran will never get a nuclear weapon. Well, as it stands tonight, the strait remains closed. Regarding Iran getting the bomb, well, that question probably is not as closed as Trump insists. More on that in just a moment. Iran says it's in the final stages of drafting an agreement with Oman on shipping routes through the Strait of Hormuz. Now, the two countries are on opposite sides of that narrow waterway. It carries about a fifth of the world's oil and gas supply. Reports suggest that under the agreement, Tehran would have control over ships entering the Persian Gulf through the strategic waterway, while Oman would oversee outbound shipping. If the deal goes through, it would signal a major shift in the balance of regional power in Tehran's favor. Now, before the U.S.-Israeli war with Iran, the strait was freely open to all ships with no fees. So is a deal to reopen the strait imminent? How confident should we be? I asked Middle East analyst Megan Sutcliffe.
Over the past few days, Iran has repeatedly stated that negotiations with Oman on reopening the Strait of Hormuz are progressing, and that indeed a final statement is forthcoming. But this is not a guarantee of progress or indeed of de-escalation with the United States. The situation remains extremely tense, and the next few days will be absolutely key in determining whether or not this vital global trade artery reopens in good time.
Iran did not want to be hit. And they said, we want to talk. We want to talk about the strait, but more importantly, from my standpoint, we want to talk about the denuclearization of Iran, because it's what it's all about. This is why I'm doing this.
U.S. President Trump has returned repeatedly this week to what he calls the denuclearization of Iran. And on this 81st anniversary of the atomic bombing of Hiroshima, the question is as timely as ever. Can military pressure prevent nuclear proliferation or make it more likely? Israel's prime minister says that he does not believe that Tehran has abandoned its nuclear ambitions.
Today, we heard the commander of the Revolutionary Guards, Fahidi, explicitly declare Iran's intention to continue developing nuclear weapons. To continue, as he said. Well, as the Prime Minister of Israel, I'm also determined to continue preventing Iran from possessing nuclear weapons.
And joining me now is Kelsey Davenport. She's Director for Nonproliferation Policy at the Arms Control Association. That's a nonpartisan organization promoting arms control policies. Good to have you on the program. Let me ask you about what we've heard from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He says that Iran's Revolutionary Guard commander has declared that Tehran intends to continue developing nuclear weapons. Now, the authenticity of the remarks that he cited, that has been questioned. I mean, is there credible evidence that Iran has now decided to build a bomb?
No, there's no evidence suggesting that Iran has taken the technical steps to begin weaponization, or that the Iranian leadership has made the political decision to do so. I mean, right now, some of the key materials and technologies that Iran would rely on if it wanted to build a bomb, remain buried and inaccessible at some of the sites that the United States and Israel have struck, over the past year. Satellite imagery, assessments from U.S. intelligence, assessments from the International Atomic Energy Agency, are all quite clear that there's no evidence that Iran is trying to recover these activities, to rebuild these facilities, or to restart any activities at this time that would be necessary for weaponization.
Well, what about the impact of the war? I mean, have the attacks by Israel and the United States, have they made it more likely that Tehran will conclude that it needs a nuclear weapon?
There have always been factions in Iran that have supported weaponization, and certainly the war, being attacked by two nuclear-armed states, is strengthening the arguments of those factions that are in favor of weaponization. But ultimately, this is a decision that is going to be made by the supreme leader. The new supreme leader does appear to be quite familiar with the nuclear file. Undoubtedly, he's hearing from those factions in Tehran that want to pursue weaponization. But I think there are also contingents in Iran that still see benefits in trading restrictions on the nuclear program for relief from US and UN sanctions. And once this war ends and Iran is confronted with the full range of devastation that this war has wrought, sanctions relief, getting those economic benefits in order to promote rebuilding and trading away aspects of the nuclear program is, I think, going to look, quite positive, and something that, again, Iran's leadership is going to explore. So certainly we should be concerned about weaponization. There are those voices pushing for it, but it's not a foregone conclusion.
Well, you are well aware that Iran's conventional military capabilities and the regional network, they've been badly weakened. Doesn't that make a nuclear deterrent more attractive as the regime's ultimate insurance policy?
Well, since the United States and Israel attacked Iran on February 28th, I think Iran has uncovered a new source of significant leverage, and that's its ability to control maritime traffic through the Straits of Hormuz. So even though it has expended a significant amount of its missile stock, even though some of its proxies are weakened, Iran has been able to control the Straits of Hormuz and use, relatively cheap conventional weaponry, drones and whatnot, to inflict significant damage on U.S. military assets in the region. So even though some of the sources of conventional leverage have diminished, Iran has uncovered, new sources of leverage. And I think there's also no guarantee that developing nuclear weapons would shield Iran from future attacks. Israel possesses nuclear weapons. It's still been subject to direct attacks on its territory, by Iran. So there are limits to what nuclear weapons can actually deter. And as Iran has seen other types of conventional strategies around the Straits, around the use of drones, yield dividends, I wouldn't be surprised to see Iran invest more in some of those conventional capabilities, as it rebuilds, and not put all of its eggs in the nuclear weapons leverage basket.
Today marks the anniversary of the atomic bombing of Hiroshima, more than 8 decades later. Is the global system, is it designed to prevent the spread of nuclear weapons? Is it beginning to break down?
I think that's a real concern. For decades, the Nuclear Nonproliferation Treaty proved to be remarkably effective in controlling the spread of nuclear weapons. But a lot of that success rested on the fact that there was relative unanimity amongst the 5 nuclear weapon states, which of course are also the 5 permanent members of the Security Council, in responding to proliferation threats and acting with unity to put in place coercive measures and diplomacy to push states considering nuclear weapons to change course and to negotiate. That unity is eroding quickly. The Security Council is not responding to Iran's failure to meet its International Atomic Energy Agency safeguards obligations for inspections on its nuclear program. The Security Council isn't responding to North Korea's threats to its proliferation. And all of that is creating an environment where states might assess that now is the time to move closer to nuclear weapons because they can do so while mitigating some of the international consequences that they may have been subject to in the past. So I'm certainly worried that we're entering a new era of proliferation risk.
I want to ask you before we run out of time, so what message then does the war against Iran, what does it send to other countries? Does it suggest that states without nuclear weapons, such as Iran, they will remain vulnerable to attacks, while other countries, as you mentioned, North Korea, once they have the bomb, no one messes with them?
Well, I certainly think that the U.S. decision to bomb Iran in violation of international law has eroded U.S. credibility and may make states less likely to negotiate with the United States on critical issues like nonproliferation. And it could then, in turn, as you noted, spur this thinking that nuclear weapons are necessary for the United States to take a country seriously. So certainly, I'm concerned about the effects on U.S. credibility, the effects on the broader regime, and how this may push states to rethink their conceptions of security and possibly then rethink whether nuclear weapons need to be a part of that security package.
All right, Kelsey Davenport with the Arms Control Association. Kelsey, we appreciate your time and your insights tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.